Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another unofficial shoutcast of me, Ikslorin, playing in the NVidia Geforce Hearthstone Pro AM tournament. These are obviously not going to be the highest level of play, at least from my side, but hopefully with these very fun decks that Ikslorin has taken to the table here, it's probably at least going to be somewhat entertaining for you and for me. We're right now here at the 7th round with Ikslorin going up against Pacantre in this best of 5 in Conquest mode. That means really that both players will have to win with all 3 decks of their choice. And Ikslorin here has not gone for any meta decks, just like he has done throughout the rest of the tournament here really. Ikslorin having a Fatigue Druid, a Hand Mage by Day 9 and an Aggro Fellweaver Mech Rogue by Trump. Really working with all of these odd decks that where he's just really trying to gain an advantage by surprising his opponent. Pacantre, just like all of the other opponents that Ikslorin has faced throughout this tournament, has chosen to go for a Ramp Druid, a Mech Mage, and a Dragon Control Warrior. So we don't see just complete meta decks, but also some spins on normal meta decks and trying to incorporate all the new juicy Blackrock Mountain stuff that has been released throughout the time that this tournament was played. Ikslorin really hoping that his Fatigue Druid will come up against anything that is not Pacantre's Mech Mage, even though actually if Ikslorin is having a good time against Pacantre with that in that matchup, he could maybe even win also with that one. It has happened sometimes on the ladder for Ikslorin, so it may also happen in this tournament. Also, Ikslorin will probably not want the Hand Mage to go up against Pacantre's Druid, as that is the worst matchup as stated by Day 9 for that deck alone. Pacantre, on the other hand, probably with the amount of control that he has in all of these choice of decks, is going to have a very strong time against, or just having the favor when playing against Ikslorin's Mech Rogue. So in conclusion, I would give Pacantre really the edge in this series. He will probably win with only something like a 3-2 or 3-1. And Ikslorin will probably mainly lose because of his Mech Rogue, which we've also seen in a lot of the other series where Ikslorin's Mech Rogue isn't as such his Achilles heel, but very much the main problem or the main fault where Ikslorin's losses lie as such. Except when Ikslorin is just going on tilt or just plays badly. So let's go straight into the very first match where Ikslorin actually chooses to do something that is very different from what we've seen before, with not going for his Fatigue Druid in the first game to keep his Hand Mage the strongest deck of them all for whenever he would fall behind, but actually taking the Hand Mage at first just so that he can get an early lead. Pacantre is going for the Control Warrior, probably because that is his strongest deck, but since Pacantre has reached Legend, unlike Ikslorin, we can probably say that Pacantre is probably feeling very comfortable playing all of these 3 decks, unlike Ikslorin himself. Ikslorin here getting a Molten Giant and an Ice Block, both of those should probably be thrown away, but with this Control Warrior it's very easy to actually keep the Arcane Intellect, and with now also getting this Mad Scientist from this mulligan, Ikslorin is pretty much well set here. Now also getting the Duplicate in hand, while that is not the best mana efficiency as you get, it is just better to get it from the Mad Scientist. It does also mean that Ikslorin has much better control over whenever the Duplicate falls down, so that Ikslorin can actually play the Acolyte of Pain whenever he wants to, and not having to play around the Duplicate already on the board. Pacantre here just going straight for an Acolyte of Pain. And Ikslorin top decks a Frostbolt, I would actually here just deny any extra card draw from Pacantre. So I agree with this Frostbolt. Ikslorin though is thinking about keeping it for later, though I'm not completely sure what other cards except for the Acolyte of Pain you really can use this Frostbolt for, because Ikslorin also has 2 Flame Cannons in his deck, meaning that he probably should just wait for using those, because there's more 4 HP stuff in Pacantre's deck most likely, except for this one Acolyte of Pain which the Frostbolt can take. And it seems like The Ikslorin also agrees with me here. Though the only problem with this is just that Ikslorin is forcing himself to play off curve throughout the next few turns, as he cannot really play something for 4 mana, but only this Arcane Intellect. But that's more than fine, as he has a minion on the board, and Pacantre hasn't really thrown anything down that is noteworthy here. And with 5 mana next turn, Ikslorin could really just go for either the lower step. With Death Spite out, he probably would want to wait with that if he maybe would want to duplicate the lower step, which is, while not the best thing, certainly still a very fine play, to say the least. I mean, 2/5/5s also stopping your opponent and just being an annoyance. That is more than fine to irritate and bring your opponent really just, or not tilting, but really just getting them off the play here. But Ikslorin chooses to go straight for the Mountain Giant here instead, as he knew that the Mountain Giant would cost 6 this turn if he only played the Acolyte of Pain. And actually really hoping here to actually get maybe an execute out of Pacantre, since this Death Spite would be able to actually trigger something like that. But we see a big game Hunter that Pacantre already had in his hand. But with that, we duplicate the Mountain Giants, and we still don't have a hand filled up, unlike what we've seen most times that actually could happen to Ikslorin. Not most times, but Ikslorin does have a tendency to actually mill himself with these duplicates here. And Ikslorin here is actually thinking about just waiting 1 extra turn so that he could play both Mountain Giants in one go. But in the end chooses to just go straight for the 1 Giant. He should probably also go for an Acolyte of Pain. Though, if Pacantre should actually have an execute in hand, that would actually just mean that he would trigger the execute with the Death Rattle from the Death Spite, and also only get 1 card out of the Acolyte of Pain. So actually keeping the Acolyte of Pain in hand is actually something that I agree with Ikslorin doing here. And Pacantre really just throwing down a Sludge Belcher, being sure that Ikslorin cannot do anything else than just trying to get through. And now with several minions on board that can actually be killed just by the Explosive Sheep, Ikslorin was thinking about throwing the another Mountain Giant down, so that he could do on this turn. But in the end, he just wanted to be sure that he could actually have a full HP Mountain Giant instead of having any kind of... yeah, it's better to have really an 8/8 that it cannot be executed without him having to use his Death Spite here. But there we see finally that Pacantre is actually not playing a regular Control Warrior here, using a very interesting Dragon Control Warrior. And now we get the Flame Cannon out, which would be great if Ikslorin could actually get the Armor Smith out of the way here. He could also bet on the RNG to hope to kill the 5/4, as we just see here. That was going for the RNG play, while a little bit risky, did pay off very much. And now also throwing down a Sludge Belcher. He will, though, with that, really bait out the Death Spite, probably. I mean, the Death Spite will be able to kill and also get extra armor out of the Armor Smith. And then he could probably... he would probably not want to sack in his Armor Smith for later, but he's still very much is going to feel like he's in a rather safe position here, with all these amount of armor that he has right now. And now also throwing down his own Sludge Belcher. And now it's Ikslorin's turn again, getting the Alexstrasza into his hand. Very good part of the combo here. But we still very much need another Echo of Medivh and Molten Giant if Ikslorin really wants to get this combo going. But he throws down a lower step, hoping that he will not see any kind of execute this turn, so that he can actually kill the Sludge Belcher with that, and probably also get a lot of cards out of the Acolyte of Pain, since he can ping it onto the 1/2 taunt, and then also ping it with his own hero power. Pacantre is thinking, though, he has a lot of cards in hand, so he should be able to do something. There we see a Shield Slam, while Lothep may make anything much more not much more expensive, still can be played, and he has had much more than enough armor to really do anything. And with that, he gets only one card out of the Acolyte of Pain, which is really good for Pacantre and really bad for Ikslorin. So he throws down another Acolyte of Pain and makes sure that he at least gets one extra card out of it. And this thing, he could go for another Mountain Giant here, but except if Pacantre really wanted to mill Ikslorin, I don't think that was really needed. You could mill Ikslorin for one card, but sounds rather unlikely that Pacantre would actually think about that play and not just do it as he's doing right now. Now we see the Cruel Taskmaster, so probably going to be followed up by some kind of execute. Yes, cool. And for the very least, an Armor Smith was also thinking about throwing down something else for 5 or 7 mana, so maybe some kind of Dr. Boom or something similar. And Ikslorin really just going for another Mountain Giant here, probably going to follow it up with some extra juicy card draw. Could actually have gone for the card draw first and making sure that he had even more mana this turn, so that he could actually also use the Fire Blast, but the Flame Cannon very much was more than enough to actually have the RNG here. Ikslorin really being lucky with the Flame Cannons, and they always killing the things that he really wants in this one. There goes Sylvanas down, probably the one thing that Pacantre was thinking about playing the last turn, but with the Polymorph in hand and another Polymorph in the deck, Ikslorin should probably be more than fine to deal with this. And there goes the Sludge Belcher down, and Ikslorin really just beginning to pick off on all of these small minions. And with actually the Big Game Hunter going down and one Shield Slam being down too, and that being the second execute, Ikslorin really only has to worry about a Brawl at this point and another Shield Slam. So Ikslorin probably feeling rather safe, because he can, whenever he gets down to 0 mana, or 0 mana, he can pretty much play the whole Molten Giant combo, forcing both of those 2 cards out of his hand, and then play 4 more Giants. Ikslorin was thinking about going for a Flame Strike and a Fire Blast, but in the end chose to go just in and Frostbolting the Shield Maiden, making sure that he could actually just deny any unfavorable trading, so that he can actually do any trading for later. But with Ikslorin actually Fire Blasting Pacantre in the face, that play I'm actually disagreeing with, as if he Fire Blasted the Shield Maiden, he would actually be able to Fire Blast it this turn too, or the next turn too, making sure that he would actually be able to kill it. I mean, he could maybe have hoped for some kind of Explosive Sheep, but Flame Striking this board, while necessary, not really something that was good value, and something that Ikslorin really would have hoped for, to say the least. There we see Nefarian, a wonderful new card from Blackrock Mountain, an 8/8, and also much just a card advantage, and also just other juicy stuff here. I was thinking about going for a Molten Giant, but in the end just says, you know what, hit me for 8, so the Molten Giants are free. I already have an Ice Block on, and I can just pop down another one if need be, followed up with an Alexstrasza. I don't think you would be able to kill me this turn. And, well, he's wrong about that one little fact, since there we see Grommash pretty much being lethal, forcing Ikslorin probably to use another Ice Block this very turn, if he would want to stay alive. He could also go down with the Sun Fury Protector, and then do the RNG on something like a Brawl, hoping that not a Nefarian or a Grommash would survive. But there we see a nice block. And 2 Molten Giants and the Sun Fury Protector going down together with an Echo of Medivh. So Ikslorin not going to get down with all the Giants that he could get, and not getting the most of these Echo of Medivhs, but getting these 2 8/8s up on the board, meaning that he either would have to, that Pacantre either would have to trade, or that Pacantre will have to use the Brawl, hoping to get something like Grommash or Nefarian to survive. But then Ikslorin can just go for another Molten Giant, and maybe Sun Fury Protector and Alexstrasza really here, if need be. or just even just go for the antique heal bot so that he can actually go for another Echo of Medivh. There we see the brawl being played. So the question is, what is going to survive? Well, it's one of Ikslorin's giants. It cannot really be executed. There is a Frost Nova from the Varian though, making sure that Pacantre at least gets one extra turn before getting dealt 8 damage, but with 48 HP, I probably can feel rather safe in this position. But Ikslorin just goes straight for the Echo of Medivh play here. I was thinking though about how much more he can get out of the Echo of Medivh, but playing it this turn, I very much agree with. We have 24 damage on the board, so, and we probably shouldn't expect any other brawls in this deck. There are no control warrior usually use 2 brawls, and that was a misplay too. So he really was playing a little bit too fast here. But with 488 taunts on the board, that is more than enough. Well, there could be some kind of Black Knight and maybe another Shield Slam, but that would still leave with all of these extra giants on board. Also, another problem with having this Sunview Protector on board would mean is that Ikslorin has 7 minions on the board, so he has really to kill one of these Sunview Protectors this turn and play the anti-heal bot to not be dealt and fatigue damage to be killed, because fatigue damage does go around your ice block. So Ikslorin playing around this, getting to a safe zone away from the fatigue phase, I really like that. He's still a few turns away from actually killing Pacantre. So I really like this. There's an Acolyte of Pain. Ikslorin probably just going to sack in his antique heal bot at this point and just go straight for face with everything else. And probably in this position, I would probably actually keep the Alexstrasza for later, as you cannot be completely sure if you're actually going to be having to stay in fatigue phase way longer than you may expect. But Ikslorin chooses to go just take out some HP from that, but except for yeah, there was actually some damage that did go through the armor here. I actually thought that there was so much armor that it may not have mattered this turn. But okay, actually using the Alexstrasza actually meant around 5 or 6 more damage. Yeah, actually 10 extra damage dealt to Pacantre. That was important enough. Pacantre also now getting to fatigue phase and saying GG, as he has nothing to answer all of these giants with, and Ikslorin is not going to die this turn alone. Ikslorin actually getting into a 1-0 lead here in the very first game. Something that we usually don't see, haven't seen in this tournament. So that means that Ikslorin has to go on to another deck. Ikslorin is hoping that he's going to go up against against this control warrior. So he is thinking that he should go over to the fatigue druid, which is going to have the best time against the control warrior. And since that Pacantre is not knowing what Ikslorin actually is using, he hasn't seen the fatigue druid yet. This is a choice that I really much like, though the fatigue druid is something that has worked for Ikslorin, but also has utterly failed sometimes, even against something like a control warrior. So since Pacantre is a legendary player, he probably knows how to play around this deck. So it's very hard to tell if Pacantre actually is going to be able, or just if Ikslorin is going to make this work. That is probably the better question here, since this dragon control warrior, even though that we haven't seen it before, I haven't seen it before, still very much sounds like it's very good. Ikslorin choosing to throw away everything but the Wrath. I think you could be a little bit more greedy with something like the Starfalls, but with getting this this dancing swords here that Ikslorin got, I think that was a fine mulligan, especially with the poison seeds that Ikslorin could use for any early threatening the minion that he would have to deal with. Pacantre not doing anything on turn 2, just going for the armor up. That's a very usual thing we see from any control warrior, except if they have a fiery war axe. But since Pacantre hasn't seen what he's up against, he's just waiting it out. There's no reason to risk an ooze being played on this Fiery Warwick, so I like this play by Pacantre. Turn 3, Ikslorin could go for the Dancing Swords here, but Ikslorin chooses to not play anything at all. He's not up at 10 cards yet, so he's just going to go and say, I'm not going to reveal the gimmick of my deck right now. I want you to first play something that is card draw, like this Acolyte of Pain. So Ikslorin is probably in this position, going to try and see if he can fake a misplay like this one. We have seen him doing that before, and now also going for the mistake emote, trying to see if he can actually make Pacantre believe that that was a misplay by himself. He goes for the shield block, that is very much a card draw, but also goes for the Fiery Warwick and hits Ikslorin in the face. So Pacantre really not really believing in Ikslorin and just going straight into dumping every card he has. And Ikslorin realizes this and just throws down the Dancing Swords and says, oh well, you figured me out. I'm just going to go straight on to milling you and see if you actually can throw down enough cards to actually stay alive here. Pacantre sacking the Acolyte of Pain, though there was not much more that could actually have happened to that one, except if we saw something like a Tree of Life. And Ikslorin is not going to play that very in the near future, but we see now an execute onto the Dancing Swords. We also saw that with Fryby and several other players, and also now another Fiery Warwick. Really, Pacantre just dumping his whole hand here, playing very well around milling, and now also just playing down the Whirlwind, just emptying his hand. Ikslorin probably not going to be able to mill anything of Pacantre's, but he very much is going to be sure that Pacantre is going to throw away a lot of these very important combo cards for something like Grommash. But I was saying something, I was talking about something earlier. Can't remember, this probably wasn't that important then, but I really like how Pacantre is answering this and now going for the Dr. Boom play. Ikslorin has the Naturalize in hand, bringing actually Pacantre all the way up now to I think 8 or 9 cards, not up to 10. And also he did just burn his one Wrath, but that was actually one of the best burns that he could actually do himself. But Ikslorin also has to be aware of actually removing all his cards himself, so he also dumps down his own Keep of the Groove not to mill himself. And there's some weird bug there. Ikslorin just waiting, hoping to see if what happened to Battle.net. He shouldn't poison. Okay, Ikslorin seems to actually have. I thought that was a bug as it seemed, but Ikslorin actually right-clicked and just said, well, I don't want to sack my Keep of the Groove for this. There's so much more stuff that I want to kill with that. Was thinking about going for a Wrath onto this Boombot, but in the end goes for the Healing Touch onto himself. Actually burns a Sludge Belcher here. Something that is maybe not the best thing, but a Sludge Belcher is still a very irritating minion. So I really, maybe not be the best thing, but you can be very satisfied still. It isn't a dream, but it's still something that is going to be very important. Turn 8. Pacantre is probably still going to try and dump his whole hand, since he is again all the way up to 10 cards. Though Pacantre is still figuring out exactly how he should do it. At least he's going to burn now his Fiery Warwick. We're probably going to see some kind of Death Spite as the very first thing here. There we go. He still has 4 mana left for playing something else. There we see a cool Taskmaster killing the Boombot, getting the damage out, but that is only 1. But more importantly, getting a card out of his hand. There we see a Swipe, something that Ikslorin really has to use for later. And just wafts this 2-2, heals himself all the way up again to 30 HP, and is feeling rather safe in this position. He has a Tree of Life that can be played at any point, and then a T-Kill bot. And should he just top deck something like a Cold Light, he can pretty much start with this Youthful Brewmaster to mill Pacantre hard. He just needs to get not the Keeper of the Groove, but the Groove Tender. Yeah, that's the card I'm looking for. Pacantre starting off with a shield block, getting the armor up for whenever the fatigue phase hits, but it is still not making his hand size smaller. But the Shield Maiden is a 5/5 on the board that is irritating for Ikslorin, but also removing cards from Ikslorin. So, since he has nothing else that he can answer it with, he's actually going to swipe this 5/5 and killing it, something that I'm not completely sure about. As we can see, Ikslorin is very much in a card disadvantage here, and this deck is, as I point out with every series that we see, this deck is all about greedy plays and just having the most value, so that even though that you really feed your opponent cards, you're going to be sure that you're going to still have at least the same amount of cards than your opponent. And now we see 2 of these Dragonkins. Ikslorin, though, at 17 HP, thinks that he can probably just go for a Youthful Brewmaster onto this Cold Light. Could actually keep on milling here, but Pacantre has 14 damage on the board. I'm not completely sure about this play, to be honest. He burns the Guamash, and he probably also is going to burn something else. Sylvanas, cool. But still, Pacantre has 14 damage on the board. He only needs 3 more. If he had just 1 more of these 5/4s, and then he could actually just battle cry into Ikslorin's face, killing him. So even that was a risky play, but since Pacantre doesn't have anything to actually kill Ikslorin this very turn, it actually paid off. Ikslorin can't go for the Tree of Life this turn, and not caring about the amount of cards that we see here, but still, Ikslorin actually being even greedier than before, since he has already seen Guamash being burned. He feels so very safe against Pacantre here. And just going for the Poison Seed Starfall combo and waiting for this Tree of Life until next turn to get, or to be sure that you actually get the damage out of it later. There's another Death Spite. Pacantre being 4 damage away from actually killing Ikslorin here. And actually now also having just as much armor as he has HP. 16 HP is he up to, and Ikslorin is going to go for the Tree of Life finally, being really risky throughout these last 2 turns. But in the end, it's finally doing the safe play, getting all the way up to 30 HP. Being very risky, but it did pay off. And there's Alexstrasza just afterwards, bringing Ikslorin all the way down again to 15. But, and Poison Seeds followed up with something like an antique heal, but is going to bring Ikslorin all the way up again. But he's going to wait for the antique heal bot for next turn probably, since with 16 HP is still very much in a fine place. Except if Pacantre goes for Nefarian and gets the infamous combo for Druids. There's the Nefarian, but the question is, what spells is he going to get out of this thing? Also, he did just get 2 cards out of this thing, so that he can actually be milled still by Ikslorin here. Ikslorin could actually just in this position go for... Actually, he can go for both Cold Lights, since he just did get an Innovate. Though he should probably have played the Innovate first, as he could burn a card. Luckily he didn't. But he is going to burn a card if he doesn't place an Innovate and... or the Big Game Hunter, but still. Goes for the Big Game Hunter and a Groove Tender also, and drawing some cards, bringing him all the way down to 8 cards, so he's actually in a very fine position here. The Cold Lights are not going to mill himself, another Groove Tender wouldn't either. And he can actually just heal up at any point. Pacantre cannot do enough damage in 1 turn to actually kill Ikslorin, since we have seen Guamash being burned. And there's the Brawl on all of these very cheap minions, meaning that Ikslorin is going to have a great time whenever he top decks Malorne. And I'm pretty sure we have also seen Big Game Hunter already being played throughout this game. So Pacantre not having any answers left for when we are actually going to see it. Wrath was one of the cards by Nefarian. So Ikslorin is not going to have any cards, and there we see Big Game Hunter being played. I was pretty sure that that would happen. And Ikslorin is going to think about actually... well, the most insulting play would here be to naturalize the Big Game Hunter, following it up with Malorn. But Ikslorin is doing the safe play, keep off the groove the Big Game Hunter, and healing himself all the way up to 20 again. We now see Ysera being played, so Pacantre still very much could be in this game. He has enough HP, and with all these very high value cards from Ysera, he's going to, or with this one, since naturalized, he could actually be in a somewhat of a fine position. Sorry for the lag. We see some card draw here from naturalize and some fatigue stuff from the groove tender. But with that, I'm actually pretty certain that Ikslorin is... yeah, that is 10 fatigue damage. Probably the highest we've seen throughout this, all of this tournament here. Well, Ikslorin getting a very perfect game here against Pacantre, who did his best against Ikslorin's fatigue druid and didn't believe Ikslorin doing a misplay in the beginning and responding correctly. But Ikslorin just had the perfect cards and drew into the perfect cards to answer all of his these threats that Pacantre could throw out, and on top of that also didn't misplay it, unlike what we've seen before. So Ikslorin playing it very well, but Pacantre also doing his very best to actually deal with this. and that means Ikslorin is actually 2-0 in this series, something that we haven't seen throughout this tournament yet. So Ikslorin has to go for his Mech Rogue now, but also Pacantre has chosen to switch his deck, as he doesn't want to go completely on tilt with this Control Warrior. So we're going to see a Mech Mage from Pacantre, something, since it actually is much more aggressive than Control Warrior, it is probably even going to be even stronger against some kind of Mech Rogue. But is this maybe the first series that Ikslorin is actually going to 3-0? Or is this maybe the start of a comeback for Pacantre? Well, there's only one way to figure that out, and that is to watch the game. The third game in the series, Ikslorin up 2-0 to Pacantre, and really only having to get a better hand than he has now. Chiefs, not something that he wants right now. Iron Sensei, a fine turn 3 play, but the Eviscerate, not something that he wants. Eviscerate though, he has to keep, and the Micro Machines, also not the best thing to have. And the Deadly Poison, Ikslorin really not having a good hand here, so the Micro Machine is going to die immediately here, and the Iron Sensei is not going to be able to do anything at all if there's no other mech on the board. Actually, in this position here, I would probably just go for a dagger and wait for the next turn until we see the Deadly Poison being able to be played. But Ikslorin goes for the Micro Machine, trying to see if he can apply some pressure and also backstabs the Mana Worm. But with just the spell, Pacantre would be able to keep his Mana Worm alive, so that Ikslorin would have to use his daggers to kill it if he has something like a Frostbolt. But Pacantre doesn't, so he's just going to Fire Blast and trade away. But still, Ikslorin having his first minion kill, but finally having an Annoyatron here. With this Divine Shield, it's probably going to stay alive, luckily. So the Iron Sensei is going to have something to buff next turn. But Ikslorin still needs something, is really playing off curve and not playing the best things that he could. And now we also see this 4-3 that I have completely forgotten what it's called. And Ikslorin thinking about going for this Cogmaster's Wench. Maybe actually the better play here, but things that, or since he hasn't seen any kind of Frostbolts yet, or believes not to that Pacantre has anyone, he's just going to go for the Iron Sensei and make sure that it is actually already played. There we see an unstable portal, so we can be pretty certain that Pacantre doesn't have a Frostbolt in his hand yet, but still very much is having all of these bigger threats yet. So we see an Eviscerate, so that the Iron Sensei is still alive and safe to buff this Harvest Golem, but also a lot of other cards in the deck. And probably Ikslorin can go for the Cogmaster's Wench and the Deadly Poison next turn very safely. There we see a Sorcerer's Apprentice, something that Ikslorin either could trade away with or just go for the weapon here. Now we see a Frostbolt. Either that was something that Pacantre really was greedy with, or he just top-decked it. Now we also see a Fellweaver, but Ikslorin goes for the Cogmaster's Wrench and just goes for space actually. Feels like with 9 damage a turn, he's in a very fine position here, though Pacantre has more than enough stuff on the board to just trade away and kill it, or he could just go for a Fireball and then trade away his Mad Scientist, or a Flame Cannon and Fire Blast and then trade. And that would mean that Ikslorin would have only a Fellweaver left, followed up with only a Fellweaver. But there's a Dragonoid Crusher though, as even though it wasn't buffed, still a 6/6 that is very irritating. Ikslorin not remembering that there just came a secret up, so he plays a Fellweaver on a Mirror Entity. Heavy misplay here, probably even sealing the game. Pacantre can just trade away, and Ikslorin is not going to have the lethal here. Though he's very close, he certainly isn't close enough to actually be able to deal it. Both Chiefs are burned, so Ikslorin is not going to be able to get any card draw out of it. Though this Goblin Blastmaster is going to be able to make the combo and also give 1 extra damage to the weapon, bringing Ikslorin again all the way to lethal. But Pacantre can just trade and be in a very fine position here. Just throw away his 2 Boombots and he's probably going to crush this board of Ikslorin. Or he has actually just lethal. He doesn't even need to do anything. He can just throw everything into the face of Ikslorin and just win the game. So that is a 2-1, very, very fast. Ikslorin probably played this, played this Fellweaver way too fast, completely forgetting about this Mirror Entity being really the biggest problem that he had. He should just have gone for the 3/3 and just having played the Fellweaver the next turn, so that Pacantre actually had to deal with something else. Also, Ikslorin would then maybe even have gotten one of the Chiefs, meaning that he would have much better card draw. So that means we're going to the 4th match, with Pacantre really going to go for a Control Warrior again. And that is a good thing, because Control Warrior should be able to hold off any early assault. So Ikslorin is not going to be able to snowball like we saw against Retna Narke. So let's just get straight into the 4th game. Is Ikslorin actually going to be able to get a good opening hand? Well, with this opening hand, he's at least not going to have a good opening. He's probably going to sack everything he has. He could keep the Cogmaster's Wrench, but he says no he doesn't. And getting the Iron Sensei, a good turn 3 play, but the Micro Machines and the Deadly Poisons, really awful plays, really awful cards to get. So the Micro Machine going to be killed immediately by something like a Fiery War Axe, and the Iron Sensei the same. And this, so he won't be able to get anything out of this Engineer either. So really, Ikslorin is in a tough spot here. There we see the Fiery War Axe by Pacantre. And with that, Ikslorin is probably going to be in a really terrible position here. So he goes for the Deadly Poison and just goes straight into the face of Pacantre. Going to wait until he's certain that he can actually play something that is not going to die immediately and can actually be comboed correctly. He could also go for the Tinkmaster's Technician just to be sure that he can actually bait out the Fiery War Axe, but Pacantre may just have the Death Spite or another Fiery War Axe that he can just play. And this Acolyte of Pain is going to be able to get a lot of cards out of something like Chiefs. Ikslorin has to actually, since Ikslorin actually has the 3 damage in the dagger, he probably is going to be able to be more than fine. So Ikslorin is going to get a new dagger, buff it up with the Goblin Blast. Nah, not that. Damn. At least I remember what that 5/4 is now called, but still, that 3/2 is certainly not called a Goblin Blast Mage. But still buffing it up to a 2/2 weapon, and now we see the Death Spite from Pacantre. Again, killing the minions of Ikslorin, but still, at least Pacantre takes some damage. And now we see a Mech Warper, so Ikslorin can play an Iron Sensei, and by that buffing the... but actually he wouldn't even buff the Mech Warper enough to actually have it alive. So Pacantre could actually just go straight into the face of the Mech Warper with his weapon and then just execute the Iron Sensei, meaning that he would probably really just slow Ikslorin so much down here that he cannot do anything. And he seems to be able to be doing that with this Acolyte of Pain, still very much having the mana for the West. Okay, he's not going to execute this Iron Sensei, but going to kill it with the weapon and get a lot of armor and also some extra card draw from the Acolyte of Pain. But with 6 mana though, Ikslorin is going to be able to now go for the... well, if it wasn't for this execute that Pacantre just coined out, that pretty much killed everything, Ikslorin would have been able to go for a Jeeves and a Tinkertown Technician, which would have been more than enough to actually get Ikslorin to get in a somewhat comfortable position here. But getting a Jeeves out without getting any card draw out of it, Ikslorin really just throwing the game here in the end. He pretty much has already with just this play with Jeeves. Well, not completely, but he has accepted a little bit that he's going to be behind. And now we see a second death by killing Jeeves and pretty much making any other stuff impossible to use. Except if he top decks another Jeeves that he could, or any other threatening thing that he could actually buff with the Iron Sensei. This is probably GG. We did see against Slows that Ikslorin actually won, even against the odds, and we can see Pacantre really just... oh, Ikslorin just hoping to get that again against Pacantre, but I'm not so sure if Pacantre is actually... if Ikslorin is actually going to be able to get into such a position here, where he's actually going to just win by top decking and eviscerate like he did against Slows. So Pacantre is just killing the Tinkertown Technician. I really like that. Cool Taskmaster to kill the Iron Sensei. And now there's only a backstab left to kill the 2-2 and the Blade Flurry to kill the Armor Smith. Now the Micro Machine will not survive anything here. It can only probably trade away, if anything. But Ikslorin plays it. There's nothing else he can do. If he wants, or if he can win in any way, then it is only going to be by throwing everything down and just hoping for the best. But we can still see a Fiery War Axe or just some kind of some minor damage that he should be able to do. So there's a Shield Slam, more than enough to kill it. Ikslorin's Blade Flow is not going to be able to do anything at all, really. And at this point. And the backstab, Ikslorin probably should just give up. There's only a Jeeves could really get him back into the game, and that is probably the only thing that Ikslorin is still waiting for. Some kind of Felweaver would probably be able to be killed by a big game hunter. There's Nefarian. I don't like to call an early GG here, but well, at least we see a Felweaver, but still, Pacantre is just going to trade away with Nefarian here, and then what is Ikslorin going to do then? Again, I really don't like to call an early GG, but I cannot see exactly what Ikslorin is really waiting for. The Chiefs may be able to get him somewhat back into the game here, but Pacantre is having so much mana here that he can really just be much more than fine with just trading away with all of these high mana minions here. And now he just plays all these cards that he can, burning everything in Ikslorin's deck. Ikslorin probably not going to have anything left after this very turn, so if that is not GG, then I don't know what is. Ikslorin actually, after this play, having some cards left in his hand, that was actually rather impressive here. But they didn't even combo these Iron Sensei, so yeah. But Ikslorin in this tournament, I think, has agreed on not going to use the concede button, just to be sure that he's not going to throw away any game for sure, even if it means something like Pacantre having to BM for Ikslorin actually to still win. But that means that Pacantre very convincingly makes this series into a 2-2, going all the way back from a 2-0. And that means that we're going into the ace match with Ikslorin facing Pacantre's Wamp Druid. And as I've said earlier in other series in this tournament, this Wamp Druid is probably going to have a very good time against a Mech Rogue, as though that is one of the best matchups for it. So Pacantre may actually do the comeback here for a 2-0, or maybe Ikslorin is finally going to get the game that he just needed to really just edge out in this series and win. Though with this hand, it looks a little bit better than what we have seen before, but we need to get this Fellweaver away, probably also the SI7 agent. But with a Cogmaster and a Mech Warp, this may look much better than what we've seen before.
The pleasure is mine.
I like this way more than anything else. Though we now see a Zombie Chow, something that can pretty much kill anything that Ikslorin just has will want to throw out on the board. So he throws down the Mech Warper, as that will at least bait out a Shapeshift, I guess. Though it will still be dead, so I'm not completely sure about that play, to be honest, since he doesn't get anything out of his Cogmaster or Micro Machine with that. And Pacantre just goes for his Wrath, making it so that Ikslorin cannot really play anything this turn. The Micro Machine is not going to do anything. Ikslorin really just thinking about going for the Dagger Master here. Probably the best play that he can do. The Cogmaster won't be able to do anything. So he's just going with a dagger into the Zombie Chow.
Here we go.
I think actually Ikslorin should not have played the Mech Warper before, just to get something out on the board. What I actually think Ikslorin has been doing wrong throughout this whole series, or maybe even in the rest of the tournament with this deck, is to actually be too aggressive with this deck. I mean, why just throw down minions if you know that they're going to be killed? You also want to get something out of them. Yes, you're an aggressive deck, but if you have to wait 1 or 2 turns to actually get it started, but then you are sure you're actually getting something out of it, then that maybe actually be the better play. So maybe Ikslorin actually has to be more passive and more controlling and a little bit more safe about his plays and not be so very aggressive about everything that he does. We just see a taunt here, meaning that Ikslorin really has nothing left, or has to sack a lot of minions in here, to say the least. So we see a Cogmaster Swenge, and probably also going to be followed up with a Cogmaster. So meaning that Ikslorin is going to have some minions on the board that Pacantre can't trade with. And also actually chooses to keep the Cogmaster in hand, since that he is going to expect the 2-1 to be dead within the next turn, so that Cogmaster would be debuffed and not be able to kill anything. And there we see the swipe on Ikslorin's face, killing the 2-1 drop, and still also bringing Ikslorin all the way down to 9 HP. Pacantre actually being much more aggressive here than Ikslorin. Probably one of the few things that he wouldn't want to do, but Ikslorin finally getting minions out on the board. That was what I was talking about, actually maybe waiting 1 or 2 turns. And Ikslorin getting all the way up to 12 HP. And Ikslorin has a lot of cool cards in hand. So maybe Ikslorin could actually get this thing to work. He has a lot of minions on the board. He has 8 damage each turn, though this one taunt may be something that Ikslorin is going to be irritated about, especially since he probably doesn't want really to use anything from his any of his weapons with that. Oh, no, don't use a weapon. It has to be buffed first. Thank you very much. I'm not completely sure about this. He's going to sack in his Cogmaster Swenge. He could also have buffed off his weapon and then follow it up with an SI7 agent, making it so that he would actually get through the taunt with more minions on the board, which would probably have been the better play. But at least he gets a massive Micro Machine here that is pretty unkillable for Pacantre. But still, Pacantre just has to throw down one quite scary minion like this for 3 part of the Shredder, and Ikslorin has to trade away to still just be alive in some way or another. But Ikslorin just goes for the most greedy play that it can.
Hey,
Not
lights
completely
out.
sure about that, since he has to kill that
Here we
2-3.
go.
Ouch. That was something on the... Sorry, there was something on the floor that hit me in the foot. Sorry, ouch. That hurt though. But actually going all the way down to 5 HP, just one swipe and a shapeshift is going to kill Ikslorin. There's the force of nature. He doesn't even need the rest of the combo. He's just going to kill him with all 3 treants, and that is it. Ikslorin, after a very convincing start, loses the series 3-2. As said in the before in the intro analysis or the pre-show, Ikslorin really going to fall down with this mech rogue of Mole. But Pacantre playing really well in this series. But also I really like how Ikslorin played the very first 2 games at least. Being a little bit too aggressive with this mech rogue, but playing it better than what we've seen before. So very impressed by both players, to be honest. Thanks to Pacantre for playing in this tournament and making for such a great games in my opinion. And thank you for watching. The last series, the 8th round, is going to be released on Friday. So hope to see you around there. We'll be back soon.